We often think about money in a really simple way. It's a straight line. You earn it, you save it, you spend it. But what if that entire model is just wrong? What if your financial life is actually a living, breathing system, one that's constantly feeding on itself? So let's ask the big question right up front. Is building wealth really just a straightforward journey from point A to retirement? Well, this framework we're exploring today says absolutely not. On the one hand, you've got that traditional linear path. It's familiar. But on the other hand, we see something totally different, the Ouroboros loop. You've probably seen this symbol before, right? The serpent eating its own tail. It represents a cycle. And in finance, it means every single output, whether that's spending or investing, eventually loops right back around as a new input. And that's what we're calling the financial Ouroboros, a completely self-sustaining financial ecosystem. The big idea here is that your financial life isn't just a collection of separate accounts and budgets. Nope. It's a single unified system where every action has a ripple effect that sooner or later comes back around. So here's how we're going to break this whole concept down. We'll start with the big picture of the serpent itself. Then we'll dive into the mechanics of your financial loop, look at the roles different assets play, unpack the incredible power of compounding, talk about the paradoxes you have to manage, and finally get to the ultimate goal, something called the radiant chomp. All right, first things first. It is absolutely crucial to start seeing your financial life as a single, unified whole. We're talking about your net worth, your cash flow, even your psychology around money. They aren't separate things. They're all interconnected parts of one living, breathing organism. And that idea leads us directly to your financial closed loop. This is all about feedback cycles, how your money either feeds on itself to grow bigger and stronger, or in some cases, actually eats itself and shrinks. So what's the engine of wealth? It's this beautiful recursive circuit. It starts with your labor, which generates income. That income, once you save it, becomes capital. Then that capital starts working for you, generating passive income. And here is the absolute key. That passive income loops back and becomes more capital, which in turn generates, you guessed it, more passive income. It is the definition of a self-reinforcing cycle. Now, this loop can go one of two ways. In a virtuous cycle, your investment returns start to outgrow your living expenses and the serpent just gets bigger and stronger. But there's a flip side, the vicious cycle. This is often fueled by things like high-interest debt, where your debt payments are bigger than what your money can generate. In that case, the serpent starts to eat itself. Okay, now that we get the system structure, let's look at its components. Think of it like the anatomy of your assets. Instead of just thinking about assets as, stocks or bonds, let's imagine they have specific biological roles inside this financial organism. First up, we've got the market mirror. You probably know these as broad index funds. Think of this as the muscle of the system. It's not trying to be fancy or clever, it just mirrors the entire economy, providing the raw power for long-term growth. Next is the sovereign store, and we're talking about cash here. This is the blood of the serpent. It provides liquidity, right? It allows energy to flow through the system smoothly. It's your stable reserve, your buffer against all the chaos the markets and throw at you. And then you have the cybernetic regulator. Think of this as the immune system. We're talking about tools like robo-advisors that automatically rebalance your portfolio. They kind of act like a thermostat, sensing threats and adjusting the system to keep everything in equilibrium. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's talk about the real engine that makes the serpent grow, compounding. This is where time becomes your greatest superpower, and that feedback loop we talked about really starts to accelerate. So let's see this in action. The first time your money doubles, well, it takes the longest. It could be 7 years, maybe 10 years, and honestly, it feels painfully slow. But then, that second doubling happens much faster. See, now it's not just your initial money working for you, it's the returns on your returns that are working. The growth is literally starting to feed itself. And by the third double, the acceleration is just explosive. The time it takes to add that same amount of wealth just collapses. This is that incredible acceleration phase, where your wealth growth seems to go almost vertical. That is the raw power of the reinforcing loop. But hold on, compounding isn't the only force at play here. We also have to fight against something called financial entropy. These are the natural forces of decay. You might get an awesome 8% return on paper, but after the friction from inflation and taxes, your real return is way lower. Your serpent has to outrun this decay just to stay alive. And that brings us to a more advanced, kind of philosophical idea, embracing financial paradox. See, building wealth isn't really about finding the one right answer to every problem. It's about learning to manage the constant tensions between competing and often contradictory ideas. Let's take the paradox of risk versus safety. On the one hand, yeah, cash feels super safe, it's stable. But on the other hand, cash is actually dangerous because inflation is silently eating away at its purchasing power every single day. True financial health means finding a way to balance both of those realities at the same time. And then there's the personal paradox of thrift. Do you enjoy your money today, or do you save it all for tomorrow? This isn't a moral judgment, it's a dynamic tension you have to manage between your present joy and your future security. The Ouroboros has to consume, to live, but it can't consume so much that it destroys its own future. So where does all this lead? What's the end game? What is the ultimate goal of building this incredible, self-sustaining system? Well, it's achieving what this framework calls the radiant chomp. The radiant chomp, that is the moment the serpent finally bites its own tail and completes the loop for good. It's that magical crossover point where the passive income from your capital becomes greater than your living expenses. That, my friends, is financial independence. It's when your system no longer needs your labor to survive. It sustains itself. And this journey, it follows a pretty predictable path. You start in the foundation phase, just focused on survival, on getting your income to be more than your expenses. Then you move into the accumulation phase, where you get strategic to make the system grow. And finally, if you stick with it, you reach transcendence, the freedom and legacy that comes from a fully self-sustaining system. So the ultimate takeaway from all of this is pretty simple. Your money isn't just a pile of numbers in an account. It's a living system. It's an Ouroboros. And the only question left for you to answer is, are your daily habits feeding that system and helping it grow stronger? Or is it slowly, silently eating itself?